Hey Bradley, I'm not sure if you can hear me, but you can go ahead and share your screen to pull up the presentation just to make sure everything's working all right this morning.
Okay.
Yep, I can hear you. You're just a little quiet. Okay, there we go. You should be able to share your screen. It's the little one on the left, the like double screen icon. Sorry, your microphone is very quiet. I don't know.
Yeah, I'm gonna try to have that. I'll work
Okay. Okay. Sorry, I'm still having trouble hearing you. I'm not sure. Sorry.
How about, can you hear me now? Are you having anxiety right now? Can you hear me now? You hear me now, but it's not good.
I can hear you a little bit better, but it's still very quiet for me. I don't know, Jonathan. I don't know if you can hear me.
I'm not getting the audio itself. Can you guys hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you.
I'm trying to figure out where I do my microphone setting here. Let's see. Better? Can you hear this better? Can you hear me now?
A little bit. It's still quiet. I think there's a lot of background noise.
There shouldn't be any noise. That's the problem. It shouldn't be noisy. How about now? I'm changing to different microphones. Can you hear me now?
Yes, that's definitely better.
It is better. So
Yeah.
that is better?
Yeah.
Okay. Does that sound pretty really good? Okay.
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay.
We're good with that, I think.
Hallelujah. Talk about now. Let me ask you this: do you see my full screen?
Yes, I can see everything. We're good with the presentation too. This is all perfect. I know it's a new tool we're working out, so just
Well, you're freaking me out.
Well, I think when we both hit mute, it'll probably even get clearer.
yeah.
So, when we're ready, I'm going to turn my microphone off, but, when we're ready, Liz, you can just say, I think we're ready to start, and then I'll introduce Bradley. When I get to, when I say something like I want to take a moment and share the combined value proposition, that's when I want to advance to that slide. Okay. And then I'll talk for a minute and turn it over to you, and then it's your show.
Rock and roll.
All right.
Fantastic. Yep.
Okay.
Great. Awesome.
Awesome. We'll start in about, I guess, a minute now. People are starting to flow in. So,
Oh my. I only wish I'd have prepared something to say. I got to figure out how I get my I need training on how my visuals are better. I was on a call yesterday for non-qualified deferred compensation, and the guy was really I liked his whole setup.
right. Background
really,
and
yeah, everything was good. I was like, man, this guy's he's a pro with this thing.
it's probably all the AI advances and whatnot are kicking in. So
Yeah, AI.
crazy world, crazy
They
world.
call that, is it Skynet?
Mm-hmm. All right, more people are flowing in.
Well,
We'll start in about 30 seconds or so, just to let a couple more people flow in. Thank you, everyone who's already here, for being early. Okay, so people are flowing in right now. Thank you, everyone, for being here. Thank you, Bradley, for being here and speaking today. And I'm going to let Jonathan start the introduction for us today, and we'll get right into it. So go ahead, Jonathan.
Okay. Thanks, Alyssa. Good morning, everyone. My name is Jonathan Anders, and I'm the CEO of Benacurve. And I want to thank you for taking some time out of your morning to join us to learn a little bit more about what's going on in the retirement plan world. I'm sure many of you are eyeballs deep into open enrollment and handling renewals, et cetera. And the last thing you need is more compliance and or regulation to deal with. But we want to make sure whether you're a client, a prospect, or just an early relationship that we provide and convey some value to help you navigate kind of this crazy regulatory environment. So we are grateful to have Bradley with us today. Bradley and I go way back. And I really just wanted to take a moment or two to share really our combined value proposition within the benefits ecosystem of Benacurve. We share a kind of a brother-sister relationship with First Financial Group. There's some common ownership in the spirit of transparency between Benacurve and First Financial Group, but it's relevant in the fact that when we approach clients, we're really trying to approach them with a universal risk management strategy and or approach. And so really what you see on this visual in blue are the core competencies of Benacurve. And then what you see in green are really the core competencies within First Financial Group. And so today, Bradley really spearheads the retirement plan services and consulting side for First Financial Group. So I just wanted to kind of pair that relationship together so you understand, why we're inviting him as a subject matter expert, but then how we kind of complement everything in the employee benefits arena when we do our work with clients. So Bradley, this is your show. This is your world. You are the wizard when it comes to retirement plan services and consulting. So I'm going to turn the floor and screen over to you. And I'm grateful for you taking time out today and educating our audience.
Awesome. Thank you. Thank you, Jonathan. Jonathan and I have worked together since the early 1990s. And my focus of my practice, so I graduated from college in the late 1980s and came into the financial services world and was very fortunate to join First Financial Group in 1992. First Financial Group is a broad-based wealth management firm, but one of the first things that our founder did was kind of helped co-found Benacurve, or its predecessor. And so what we really focused on in the early 90s was breaking like the areas of what we do into specialized zones. And then when we had the opportunity to work with a client that had a specific need, rather than having a broad approach where we didn't always know the answers, we had these like special forces that we could bring in. Jonathan's one of those special forces that almost every advisor with the firm, I'm like, hold on, take Jonathan, take his team in. These guys, there's a level of competency that you need to earn the hard way through years and years of experience. And Benacurve does that, and we partner exceptionally well with them, and we have since the early 1990s. So I had built a wealth management practice in First Financial Group that focused heavily in retirement plans. What we found in the 1990s, as retirement plans went from profit sharing plans into almost largely 401k plans, where participants were driving their investments, and this is like for people my age, they remember this, but for younger people might believe that everybody always knew how mutual funds worked and how 401ks worked and all this kind of stuff. But in the early 1990s, 404C, which was the section code that basically said to employers, delegate investment decision making to your participants and you'll mitigate some of your risk, that started a whole new arena of not just financial exposure for employees, but also or financial knowledge exposure and acquisition for employees. It also created a whole new arena that has just kind of exploded into what we have today, expanded, not exploded in a negative way, expanded into what we have today. And this environment is going to it's already complex. What Secure Act 2.0 has done is made this even more complex and given more options, not just to employers, but also to employees with regard to what they do with their money. And it's changed a lot of the basic rules. So the focus of this presentation today will be Secure Act 2.0 information. I think that through this year and late last year, we got a lot of basic information. But as an advisor interacting with record keepers and administrators every day, who are real experts in the implementation of those rules, what I'm getting is kind of a front end interaction with how that impacts the clients that we have in the retirement plan space. So I'm hoping today a lot of people on the call will say, I did not know that, or how does that impact my retirement plan? And this is really the objective here, is to get people exposed to go ask the advisor that you work with or the record keeper administrator that you work with, how is this thing going to impact my plan? Because I heard this, does it impact us or doesn't it? Anyway, so this is our little history. Our firm had a TPA, and today we have a whole fiduciary consulting practice. We work with retirement plans all across the United States, clients in the hundreds, and retirement plans from zero, startup retirement plans, all the way up to like $50 million retirement plans. So we're broadly across the retirement plan space. And that really fits well into First Financial Group and Benacurve's demographic of clients. So one thing I'd say, and I think I have it as a later slide, regardless of whether we work with you, if you ever need a sounding board or you have a question, and the way that I'm facing life today is, after 35 years of doing this, almost 40 years of doing this, I feel like if I can help somebody, I want to help them. If you feel like you need assistance and I can be of value, reach out to me and I'm happy to help regardless of whether we ever work together. Because I really think that that's really what the world needs now is people to kind of assist each other and then direct wherever you need to get the right answers and awesome, live long and prosper, as they say. Anyway, so back in 2019, they passed this law that was Secure Act 1.0. And I think a lot of us kind of missed, it wasn't really that huge of a deal, but then we had this pandemic thing and it recalibrated everybody's world. And so Secure Act 1.0 had a couple of things in it that, like, they changed the required mandatory distribution age to 72 and a couple of other things. But there were two big things that they did that are going to impact our world massively going forward. One of them is that any plan established after December 29th of 2022 has got to be auto enrollment at 3% starting next year with a 1% auto increase up to 10%. And this is, for me, one of the biggest things that I don't see people understanding. And I think it's important to recognize if right now I have a 401k plan that I roll out to my employees. Let's say that 2 years ago, I roll a retirement plan out to my employees and I own a restaurant and we've got 80 people and I'm going to do a safe harbor match on that because we want the highly compensated people to be able to defer as much as they possibly can. And what we find out is that of the, we have 80 people. Of the 80 people, 12 non-highly compensated people don't actually participate. Everybody else doesn't participate. We've got to match those non-highly compensated people. And as a result of our safe harbor matching, our highlies get the ability to max defer, right? That's awesome. That's the way that it used to work. It's not going to work that way anymore because we're going to roll a plan out and we have 80 people and they're all going to be auto enrolled at 3%. So instead of having whatever that number was, 10 or 12 non-highlies, if we've got 80 people, we're going to have 80 enrollees. And of those 80 enrollees, there's a really good chance that 80% of them to 90% of them are going to remain enrolled. And if we're going to use safe harbor matching, which is 4% of payroll, if they all take the 4%, let's say if they all take the 3%, your financial exposure now is basically 3% of payroll when we roll out a retirement plan, if we're going to use safe harbor matching. And I was on a call earlier today. I was talking to other advisors and saying, I think that we're entering a new era potentially of non-qualified deferred compensation for highly compensated people. Because if you're the CFO of a company and you're looking at this 3% automatically people enrolled, they have to like actually take the time on the weekend to go disenroll. And they're not going to do that. I actually had an experience with an Amazon distribution center where the HR manager wanted to do auto enrollment, and we found that nobody disenrolled. So they were 98% enrolled. So these people are going to do it. If you've got that matching, you're going to have that financial exposure, and then you've got 1% auto increase. So it was 3% last year. Next year, it's going to creep to 4%. Then it's going to go to 5%. And ultimately, if your people don't disenroll, you're going to have a 4% financial exposure as a company. And there's no rectifying that. If you roll a 401k plan out, it's going to be auto enroll beginning of this year. Any plans are going to be auto enroll with a 1% auto increase. And I'm asserting a lot of things about disenrollment, but statistically, that's what we find is people don't disenroll. And what I've experienced in communication with employees over the past decade is nobody at any retirement plan except the HR person or the payroll manager knows what they've been auto enrolled into for Social Security tax. So nobody has any idea that 6.25% or 7 point whatever with Medicare is coming out of their paychecks. They just know what their net paycheck is. And that's what's going to happen here is once it occurs, they're going to just get used to the net paycheck. So that's a very big deal. It's going to change the landscape forever. Prior plans that already exist will be grandfathered in. You don't have to do auto enrollment, but the government's going to give you a tax credit if you do shift to auto enrollment. And what we're going to see over the next decade is auto enrollment. I think that's the move that we're going to end up seeing. The other big thing that came out of Secure Act 1.0 was multiple employer plans and pooled employer plans. And again, I've been beating this drum over the last couple of years with employers. It used to be small employer or employer gets to a point where they're at a threshold and they want to start a retirement plan. We go out to different record keepers like John Hancock, Principal, Empower, Vanguard. We get a spreadsheet of options together. We identify whether we want to have a third-party administrator, and that employer is paying $2,000 a year for administration, and depending on the vendor, there might be 1% asset charge on funds inside the retirement plan, and it's kind of clunky and it's expensive. The government, I think, what they realized was there's a solution out there that already exists in professional employer organizations, associations, and chambers of commerce that's called a pooled employer plan or a multiple employer plan. There might be efficiencies here. So they eliminated the one bad apple rule. So they created the one bad apple rule, which basically was in multiple employer plans. Let's say we're part of a professional employer organization. If one of the companies that's inside that retirement plan, we all are in that plan together, we all have our little sub-adoption agreements, but one of those guys, one of the participants doesn't do their thing, the concern would be, well, what if their non-compliance hurts me? We're all in this together. Well, what Congress said was what they do doesn't affect you. Okay. So your plan is in and of itself its own thing. It's got its own testing. It's got its own matching. It's got its own adoption agreement. And their non-compliance can't impact you. That was a big deal. And they really put a stamp of approval on pooled employer plans, which pooled employer plans don't have to be anymore affiliated with a PEO, an association, or chamber of commerce. So organizations like ours, we are affiliated with Mass Mutual's broker dealer, Melis. They've actually rolled out to the marketplace a pooled employer plan that we can bring small retirement plans into and save them money almost immediately off the bat, and then eliminate a lot of the 316 exposures that fiduciaries have for administrative and enrollment eligibility tracking, disclosure, notification, and the plan runs as a 338. So the investments that are in the plan are kind of pre-managed. So my point is, if I rambled a lot there about the nuances of different things, is that it's becoming something that's a lot more streamlined if employers evaluate moving into a pooled employer plan. And this is another big thing. I think I might mention it a little. Oh, it's here, eliminate audit. If I am a company that has 350 eligible participating or terminated employees in my plan, and I'm subject to this cursed audit annually that requires HR to constantly be trying to find information for a third-party auditor, and then we have to pay $10,000 a year to that third-party auditor. If we move that plan, let's say it's got $10 million or $5 million in it, but it's got the 300 people that make it an audit candidate. If we took that plan and moved it into a pooled employer plan, we would eliminate our audit. And so that's a big deal, because the pooled employer plan in total has one audit, but the participants do not have an audit. So this is one of those things that I've been saying to a lot of small companies that have that demographic, or advisors. Hey, if you've got a large restaurant group, or you've got an organization that's got all these heads and we're being audited every year, we have to have this audit every year. This might be a thing. It's a paradigm change, but again, I think it's the future, a large part of the future of retirement plans. Now, there's another rule with regard to audits that probably 5 people on this call right now are thinking, I know this audit rule. Okay, I'm going to talk about that too. But this is a solution that can solve that. So here are some highlights of Secure 2.0 that you all may not know. So that was Secure 1.0. These are Secure 2.0 things. And it's funny, just this morning, I was listening to what I do in my spare time, which is financial radio. And advisor came on and said, this 529 conversion to Roths thing is a huge deal. And it's kind of, we're exposed to the retirement plan aspects of things, but in Secure Act 2.0, they also say, you know what, if my mom and dad put a whole bunch of money in a 529, and I'm now 34, and there's $50,000 in my 529 that we didn't use because I'm a genius and I got a scholarship. I have the ability to potentially use that for other beneficiaries, but I also now have the ability to convert $7,000 of it a year into Roth with, I think the maximum conversion amount is $35,000 of that $50,000. So I can take college money and change it into retirement money. And me personally, I'm a big fan of Roth. I think Roth is great for kids. I think Roth is great for most people because principal can be extricated from a Roth and the earnings can be kept in the Roth. And so, like, again, Roth is one of those, if individual Roth accounts, if I have kids that need money for houses and when they're 30, I could pre-fund or I could help them fund Roths, and then they could use the money that accumulated in it that was their basis, and they could use that as a deposit for a home or something like that. But the 529 plan is kind of a cool thing that most people aren't familiar with. This is one of my least favorite parts of Secure Act 2.0, and I would highly encourage that employers don't adopt this. Self-certification for hardships. That's where the employee knows, hey, the plan allows me to take a hardship and I want to take money out of the retirement plan, and they basically go online to ADP or they call the number and say, yeah, I'm having a hardship and it's bad, I'm going to go bankrupt or whatever, and then they get their distribution, and that certification has to be valid. It can't be just I'm hitting hard times. It's got to be, I really am like on the verge of bankruptcy. I really am being foreclosed upon. There's certification that has to be done, and you don't want to get into a situation where post fact an audit says you didn't qualify for that that hardship. So, and hardships stink anyway. You got to pay the taxes and the penalties on it. But we definitely don't want to get into I fraudulently, even if my intentions were good, that I didn't qualify for it. Matching for student debt. A recent survey that I heard, like 90% of employers said, we're not doing that. That's crazy. But the story basically is Abbott Labs years ago had, I think it was 5-to-1 match or something like that. You put $1 in, they put $5 in, and they looked at their demographic and said, why are people not doing this? This is insanity. And then when they examined it, what they realized, well, we have a whole bunch of people that went to graduate school and medical school, and they are all like living in their mom's basement, and they don't have any money to put in the retirement plan. They're putting all their money into the student debt that they've accumulated. And so they basically said, well, listen, if you validate that you put 5% of your pay into it's paying your student debt, then we'll put the match in for 5% of your pay, even though you didn't put money in the retirement plan. Went to the Supreme Court. Supreme Court said, they can do that. And then what they did was incorporated that in Secure Act 2.0, which is interesting. It's definitely like auto enrollment. When we talked to clients about it 8 years ago, this is one of those that almost every employer says, I'm not doing that. But we could see a cultural change over the next couple of years. So it's on a per plan type of a basis. And I would say it's probably given the demographic of who you're recruiting and who your employees are. This is got like a blessing. Oh my gosh, simple plan conversions. If you are an employer and you have a simple plan, you all probably know that if by next Monday or next Wednesday, you don't put a notice out to everybody that you're going to convert to a 401k, well, you're on the simple plan train again next year. So simple plans historically have had, you got 60 days before the end of the year, you have to notify everybody that you're going to convert over to a 401k plan. And that rule has changed. We can now do a simple plan conversion next year, anytime. We still have to give notice, but we can do the conversion anytime. That's wonderful. I personally, I've worked with simple plans a lot over the last 20 years. I think it was 96 that they were introduced. But I feel like they're a bastion of non-compliance and poor eligibility tracking, and they are, in my opinion, generally expensive, and we could potentially do a lot better in a 401k plan. So that's my pitch for let's move to 401k plans if we can. There's this thing that most of you are probably aware of. That was basically if you make over $145,000 right now, if you're over 50, you can put $30,000 into the retirement plan. 22.5 is the base amount that you can put in, and the $7,500 on top of that equals $30,000 of employee deferral. Next year, it was going to be that $7,500 you have to make as Roth if you make over $145,000. And it's interesting because I'm like, because again, I don't really have a distaste for Roth. I think it's beneficial for people to diversify what their retirement assets are going to be anyway. So I didn't really look at it that poorly, but I had a couple of people around my age or a little bit older say, "What are you talking about? I want to deduct 30 grand. I'm making the most amount of money possible. I'm in the highest tax bracket of my lifetime." And I'm like, oh, that's probably what they're doing is the government said, well, these people make a lot of money. They benefit from Roth. We'll make them pay at a high tax bracket. And so that's a thing. The IRS said we're going to suspend that rule for 2 years. So if you thought it was coming, it's going to come, but it's going to be in 2025. This is a big one. Employer can make the match with Roth dollars. This is at the plan level. You adopt in your plan. We give people the right to elect that they get matching in the form of Roth. If you don't, they don't. Okay. So I've had some plans reach out to me and say, we've got employees asking about having their match done as Roth. We have to amend the plan to allow for them to have that option. And some of the plans that I've worked with over the last couple of years, I've talked about Roth and they say, I don't want Roth. No, we don't want Roth. It's too confusing for our people. Those days are over. You're no longer going to ever have the chance not to offer Roth. You're going to have Roth for deferrals, for one thing, for the people making over 145, but also this matching thing, you'd have to have that money type in the retirement plan. So the employer matching with Roth is a big thing. It's an elective on an employee basis, but it's also an elective on an employer basis. So if you don't adopt it in your plan, employees won't have the ability to add it, but you may want to contemplate doing that because a lot of our younger people really specifically like that. There's all these tax credits. I'm going to show you an example of these tax credits in a second. But they're for startups. So it's kind of like, you don't get the new HBO or Comcast offer. Because you've already subscribed, you don't get the discounts of the new people. For new employer plans, they've got this crazy 5-year startup tax credit regime. And then they've got this employer matching thing. That is, here's the example. So for employers starting a retirement plan, they're giving $250 per head for non-highly compensated people in the plan as a tax credit, okay, up to $5,000 for the first 5 years of a retirement plan on a graduated schedule. Then if you come on board with automatic enrollment, it's $500, which is crazy because I think that'll probably go away next year because everybody's going to be auto enrollment. So that maybe that one will disappear. Maybe this only applies if you're an existing plan and you add it to your retirement plan. Or if you started your plan this year and you were auto enrollment. And then the last one is this tax credit for matching. And it's basically up to $1,000 per employee who earns less than $100,000. So, let's say that they're doing the 5% deferral and you're matching 4% on it. And the match is your match out of pocket is $1,000. You're going to have to put the match in, but then you're going to get a tax credit for it back from the federal government. And again, this is on a graduated scale. If you're evaluating establishing a plan and you want to know what these tax credits are, I have a really great calculator. Ask me and I'll send you the calculator. You can put in your specific demographic. But I put these numbers in: 20 non-owner employees making under 135 grand, 15 employees earning 100 with an employer match or contribution of 20 grand. And what you get out of this is in the first 5 years, there's about $69,000 worth of tax credits coming to this specific employer demographic. And if you've ever been on a call with me, I do not like to get political, but I definitely have a worldview. My worldview incorporates the fact that I think that the government wants employers. They do. They have this. It's almost like a battle plan. The states are coming at us in one direction. The federal government's coming at us in another direction. The states are saying, and I'll show this in a second, you either have a plan or you're going to get your people in our plan. That's the states. And then the federal government's saying, hey, if you get a plan that's for your employees, that's a 401k, we'll give you money, and we'll give you money for matching too. But that money for matching is going to go away. So I think what they're kind of doing is saying, we want everybody to have a 401k plan if possible. And then ultimately the burden, in my opinion, because of auto enrollment and the safe harbor caveats, is going to ultimately be on the employer. So they're going to help employees have more retirement money. And potentially that's going to be largely the burden of employers. And just so nobody will ever address Social Security until we're at the edge of the cliff. So I think that's what they're doing here, is they're saying, well, Social Security, that's a train wreck over there. Let's try to figure things out over here for employees across the United States. So I just would forewarn all employers, and it's on my next slide, go through and start thinking about what your exposure is going to be for this auto enroll thing if you established a new plan. And then, but that there is also some other good things that are out there, especially for newer plans. This is a big one. I was on a call this morning. Go ahead.
Sorry, I just want to interrupt real quick. There is a question on the side. I think it was about a couple slides ago. I didn't want you to miss it. It just says, what's a good percent to start with if your company does not match? I believe it was about.
So if you are a participant, and like I'm an employee and I want to enroll in the 401k plan, I would specifically say, one of the HR managers I work with, who's just a blessing in my life, about 5 or 6 years ago said to me, Bradley, when you do employee engagement, I need you to talk about auto increase, get them to do auto increase. So we get people with enroll at 3%. So one, you generally won't even feel 3%. And then do 1% auto increase. I know on Fidelity, that's who our retirement plan is. That's not a pitch. They just are our provider. I can do every 6 months, increase it by 1%. So I could start at 3%, and at the end of the next 12 months, I could be at 5%. And then the next 12 months, I could be at 7%. And what that slow cooking frog thing is awesome, because we really don't know it. It's the inertia factor that's problematic for most people. So what I do get concerned about people enrolling in a retirement plan is overdosing on the deferral. So I do get people who will say, I'm going to put 20% in. And I'm like, well, talk to your wife first, because that's going to be like a shocking paycheck when you see what 20% looks like. So calculate the hard dollar and enroll within a number that you're comfortable, and then really try to subscribe to that auto increase thing, because what a blessing it is to look at it. And I'm going to tell another story and then I'll get right back on track. You're at 10% after 5 years. You started at 3%, you're at 10%. Things get tight. You have 2 kids, you can't really do it. You go from 10% to 5%. That's awesome. That is, you're still saving for retirement. You're still above where you started, and you have the ability to have some wiggle room. And you know what? You could even go down to 5 and say, I'm going to start with the auto increase again. And so next year it's 7 or 6 or whatever. So I love that. I had this engagement with an employee. I started working with a retirement plan down in DC in 1993. And right before the pandemic, I'm sitting down with the employees in their conference room, and one-on-one, they were kind of funneling in it. And this is the stuff so I feel like I'm very fortunate, and have been fortunate to engage with people over the years. I feel like a lot of advisors look at employee engagement as something that we need to have a platform for, but they delegate it to 800 numbers and things like that. I think it's really important for the employees to know that they could talk to a CFP, that they could talk to somebody, and all of the stuff that we do. And I'm not bragging. I'm saying, if your advisor doesn't do this, tell them, I want you to do this. I want you to engage with my people, because that's also part of your job. And engage in a way where it's not solicitous. It's, I'm here to help. I'm going to explain how Roth works versus pre-tax or whatever. Anyway, Steve says to me, hey, Bradley, pull up my account, take a look at it. I pull up his account. I'm like, dude, that's awesome. You're 40 years old. You got $400,000 in your retirement plan. That's astounding. And he's like, is that good? And I'm like, yeah, that's great. I said, how'd you get that much money? They don't really match much here. And he's like, well, you may not remember this, but when I was like 26, I started working here. And you told me that the maximum I could defer back then was 15 grand. And that's what I've been doing. I've been doing the maximum every year. And I'm like, what? That's crazy. You've been doing the maximum every year? And he goes, yeah, is that good? I'm like, well, I mean, I don't know how you did it because I raised 3 kids during that period of time. It's very difficult to shove $18,000 into a retirement plan. He's like, oh, it's funny. My wife's done it too. I'm like, hold on, what? You guys have $800,000 at the age of 40? Yeah. And I looked at the guy and I'm like, you're one of the very few free people in our country, because if he put no more money in it, it would be $3.2 million by the time he gets to 60 if he gets 7% return, the rule of 72, because he committed early to a certain amount and then lived his lifestyle after that. And he said, we were able to do it. So I say do as much as you can. I'm also very thankful that we now have Roth as an option because there are different rules around that. But don't overdo it. And also, I'm a big proponent of people having liquidity outside of retirement plans because, as I tell my kids, cash is king. Illiquidity is death. So we don't want to have all our money locked up in some government subsidized program, which is what these 401ks are. They're government controlled programs. We get our money out of them if we obey their rules, right? We get benefits for participating in them. So anyway, great question. Anyway, let me ask, so I'll go back to this. I apologize. So the new rule basically is, so it's part-time employees. So I had a call this morning. Full-time, part-time is this new rule. It used to be 1,000 hours and 1 year is our most strict exclusion of other employees. And we can say no part-times. And then other plans would say, well, it's immediate. We want, anybody can enroll. But the most restrictive was 1,000 hours and 1 year. Well, now it's basically still can be 1,000 hours in 1 year, but if you have part-time people that have worked for you for 2 years in a row and 500 hours, up to 500 hours or more, they are in a category called full-time, part-time. Full-time, part-time, they're eligible for your retirement plan. And this is something every retirement plan should audit. And really the recommendation is to go back 3 years, audit who's been working for you during those 3 years for over 500 hours, 500 to 1,000 hours. You make those people eligible to participate in your plan. Now, the good news is this, they don't count for ACP testing or top-heavy testing, and you don't have to match them, okay? But you should have a basic discussion with your advisor, administrator, record keeper around what your policy is going to be and what you're going to do about these people that they might have worked 500 hours last year and they worked 500 hours this year. They might be eligible to be in the plan on January 1. We have to have a policy that reflects how we're going to handle it. Somebody asked, if you move to a pooled employer plan, is the new audit rule still in play, or is it just a pooled plan that is audited? It's just the pooled plan that's audited. So that's a great question. There's this new thing that I'm like, what are they doing here? They're basically saying, it used to be, if I have over 120 people on December 31st that are in the retirement plan eligible, participating, or terminated with balances, we are an audit candidate. That means we have to go out and get some third-party accounting firm. They're going to charge us $8,000. They're going to drive our HR people and our CFO crazy and the advisor crazy, trying to get all these documents to make sure that we were compliant. And I think I already said we paid $10,000 for them to give us this wonderful service, and then they file it for us. So what they've done now is they've said, all right, what we're going to do is counting participants with balances at the beginning of the year. If you're over 100 of participants, that's active participants, not terminated with balances, not eligibles, then you have to do an audit. If you were one of these companies and you had 400 people that were active employees participating, you would still have to do an audit. But if you rolled into a pooled employer plan, you'd eliminate that audit, which would be a phenomenal thing for people who hate the audit, because the pooled employer plan is going to have its own audit. Anyway, so that's an exciting thing. I think that I know my experience is there are a lot of employers that the bane of their existence is this audit thing, and it's great to be able for us to move past it. So I think I have 2 slides after this, something like that. But what do? Understand the details. learn more about the details. You're going to probably have employees asking you things. Attending, like I probably have another one of these calls later on this week from another record keeper, just to understand what those rules are. Not that you're going to get all of the information, but that you get exposed to it so that you're conversant in it. Understand how it fits your demographic. Like I was saying before, the student debt thing. Again, if I had a bunch of PhDs and people that medical degrees, and I wanted to recruit those people and retain those people, I might add that loan provision. The Roth matching thing, I might add that loan provision for specific demographics of people. If you don't have Roth, you contact your people. If they haven't contacted you, add Roth to the plan. It's prevalent. It's going to be the case. Review your payroll for part-time people over 500 hours for the last 5 years, big time. If you get an audit, understand how the audit rules impact you. And then I'm not saying that you should evaluate a PEP or a MEP unless it really fits you, but know that there's a thing out there that actually is. I've been saying to advisors, that's going to be the future. Total sideline, and I don't want to do too much out of school, but in June of the pandemic, I launched a multiple employer plan for a PEO. We had one plan in that plan. Plan. Today we have 90 companies in that one retirement plan. So we've merged 90 companies into one retirement plan that has one plan audit that's done. And each one of those companies has their own testing, their own matching, their own vesting schedule, their own eligibility, all that kind of stuff. And so why did they do it? Because they pay a lot less for it. And it's an integrated type of a system. So it's a solution. I've been saying to advisors over the last couple of years, I really believe that this is the future. Unless you're in an environment where you want it to be just your silo and you want to manage all aspects of that silo. Evaluate what auto enroll means to your budget. I think that's a huge one. If you are in states like Maryland and you have a plan, you make sure that you file with the state of Maryland and let them know you have a plan, because the way that you may not know, the way that it works is when you file your taxes for your business, you won't get a tax credit. It's kind of like a penalty because you didn't file a form before the end of the year saying that you have a plan. Because the way that the state plans work is you're either offering your people and you have evidence that you offered your people the opportunity to enroll in the state plan, you educated them about it, and I'm not helping you with that because that's not my plan, that's your plan, their plan, or you have your own plan. But you have to be able to let the state know that you have a plan so that you can get out of enrolling them in the Vestwell or BlackRock state plans that are IRA-oriented plans that I'm not a really big fan of. Consider adding auto enrollment. I think it's the future, honestly. This is huge. I think the next couple are really huge. So many plans I interact with, they don't have an investment policy statement on file. They're boilerplate. They don't have to be the most amazing thing, but they say how we evaluate funds that are in the plan, what our decision-making process is. When we do something, what are the protocols that we use? That's really important. It's good to have a committee, and that committee shouldn't just be the CFO. It should be CFO, HR manager, and two other people that work at the employer that actually participate in at least semi-annual meetings where we're talking about plan health and fiduciary oversight and reviewing the funds that are available in the plan in the context of our IPS. And then in addition to that, every 3 years benchmarking the overall plan. I will say I just benchmarked a retirement plan where the plan was being charged 58 basis points for a $2 million retirement plan, and the alternative that was available in the marketplace was 20 basis points. So you're talking about 38.38% of assets that was unnecessarily being confiscated from employer or employee assets. So it's a thing. And that's really where some of the litigation is in retirement plans today, is employees wising up that, we had money coming out of the retirement plan. When I look at the disclosure, I finally understand that the S&P 500 doesn't cost 78 basis points. It costs 0.04. That differential is going to somebody. And is that appropriate? That's my money that's paying those people's salaries. That's a thing. And again, if we have a recession and there's a whole bunch of people sitting on the couch watching The Price is Right, there are going to be advertisements for that from attorneys. So we want to make sure that we have a process. We want to make sure we have a file. We make sure we benchmark our plan. Make sure that you have it all in a place that you control, and delegate as much as you can. Integrate with your payroll provider. And I won't pitch payroll providers, but integration is really important so that somebody in your company doesn't have to input stuff every Monday for not fund changes, for deferral percentages and Roth versus pre-tax and remitted over. Get out of that business. Delegate it to a third-party payroll provider. And you know what? If your payroll provider doesn't do that, go evaluate another payroll provider, honestly. Because there's a duty there. It's 316, and you're fulfilling it if you're not delegating it to somebody else. This is a stat from Fidelity. 47% of plans are looking at their advisor and to evaluate whether they should fire them and get somebody else who's qualified. And in my career, this is, you all probably know this, it's become wealth management people and then retirement plan specialists. And I do that specifically, wealth management people, retirement plan specialists. If your advisor is a great guy or gal and they are a wealth management person, that doesn't mean that they should also be the person doing the janitorial work on your retirement plan. That's what people hire specialists for. You want to have the orthopedic surgeon working on your knee. You don't want to have the GP working on your knee. Not to say that you don't need a general practitioner, but you want to have a specialist working on the retirement plan, because as the trustee or the HR manager, when you're making decisions and those decisions incorporate employees paying for me or paying for that other advisor, you're a fiduciary. You're standing in charge of how their money is being spent, and you're supposed to be fulfilling that duty. The other one is the record keepers. And I got to tell you, if you all aren't evaluating changing your record keeper, and I won't throw names under there, I am, because I'll tell you right now, the record keeper marketplace, there are a lot of clunky, crappy record keepers. We've seen this consolidation going on over the last couple of years, and we're getting to, there will be hopefully 5 record keepers left or something like that. But record keepers are really important. And the good news, if your advisor is skilled, is you take your benchmarking stuff, and even if you don't want to change record keepers, your advisor should have the ability to get your record keeper to give you conciliation on costs if they're available to you, which is a big thing that I do. This is TMI on one slide, but basically this is the future of retirement plans. All of these states, mostly blue states, I don't think, oh, look, Texas actually has legislation introduced. Florida doesn't. But most states right now, like I said before, are saying, hey, we've got BlackRock and Vestwell want us to offer a retirement plan to your employees. Either you get a retirement plan or you're going to be responsible for helping your people get into our retirement plan. At least once a year, you're going to have a meeting to help them understand how they do it. And then you're going to help them remit out of your payroll into the state retirement plan. So this is again, we got the feds with money flowing down to stimulate 401k. And then we've got the states with this whole state plans. So second to last slide, benchmark your plan. Extremely important. If you have questions about benchmarking your plan, what you need, and again, this is a little bit more solicitous, but get to somebody who's qualified your 408b2 and your 404a5. They can illuminate where the costs are and identify whether there's inefficiency there. Not to be malignant, but if your advisor is like, hey, I don't have the answer, call this 800 number. If your advisor is a wealth management guy, even if he or she is like a bud, this is one of those moments. Dodd-Frank started it. We're getting to a point now where it's no longer acceptable just to say, they're a good person. They're being compensated. Somebody's got to be doing this plan, this maintenance stuff. You have your job, your HR, your CFO, and for you to know, like I had a plan earlier this year say to me, well, we went to Vanguard and we got numbers from them. And I said, well, that doesn't make me feel good because that's really my job. I'm sorry that you did that. But there's more to it than just going to Vanguard. And I don't have it in here, but if you're ever looking at changing your 401k plan provider. If you have a stable value fund, which is a fixed account in your retirement plan, you better understand the caveats around market value adjustments, because there could be a $100,000 penalty for moving your retirement plan if you've got a big stable value fund. And that's what this plan ultimately said. Well, we were thinking about this, and I said, well, may I explain to you why it would be good if we worked on it together? Because this is a train wreck waiting to happen. And so just, again, evaluate, keep records, have processes. And if you have questions about any of this kind of stuff, I would just say, reach out to me if you need my assistance. And we're here as a partner with Curve to help you as much as we possibly can. And with that, I think I have one more slide, but I won't do it. If you have questions, I'm opening up for questions, I guess.
Yeah, so feel free. Anyone can type in questions right now. I think we've already had a couple participants that have been answered, but if there's anything else, we'll just open the floor a little bit longer, and then we'll just wrap up. But it doesn't look as though anybody is typing right now. So I'm just going to say thank you, Bradley, for speaking today. That was awesome. And I hope everyone can take something away from that. Just a reminder to everyone here today, you will be receiving a recording of today's live event, and any webinar that we host is recorded and sent out to everyone who is registered. So even if you can't make it live, feel free to register and watch the event on your time. I'm just going to wrap up by saying that everyone will also be invited to our final webinar of 2024 on December 13th. With the topic being compliance regulations and updates heading into the new year, with our compliance expert, Sarah Borders, speaking. If anything has piqued your interest today, or you're wanting to explore a question that you may not have had answered, feel free to reach out to us and we will help you out and get you where you need to be. So I hope everyone has a great rest of your day, and hope to see you guys in December. Thank you again, Bradley.
Thank you. You all have a great day.
All right. Bye.